I glanced at my iPad, its screen lit by the harsh light of Brianna's latest TikTok video. I hadn't realized how much pain that little device could cause until that moment. There she was, my granddaughter, grinning with a cartoonish filter that made her look more like a grotesque caricature than the beautiful young woman I raised. "You won't believe what that pathetic old woman did," she screeched, her voice high and mocking. My stomach knotted as the video played. There I was, stumbling, trying to replicate the dance move she'd insisted we do together, all for the sake of her content. At the time, I thought it was just a laugh. But now, with millions of views flashing before my eyes, I realized the truth. I had unwittingly become a laughingstock. The comments rushed past like a high-speed train, each more vitriolic than the last. "How pathetic! How embarrassing! Give up already, Grandma." With each comment, a deeper sense of betrayal washed over me. I set the iPad aside, letting out a shaky sigh. I bought that damn tablet, paid for her college, and even encouraged her dreams. Was this really all my support had come down to digital bullying? I'd expected laughter and shared memories that day, but not this. The room around me seemed to shrink as the depth of her actions sank in. My heart grew heavy with sadness, regret, and confusion. I'd poured all my love into her, hoping to lay a foundation of gratitude. Instead, she'd built a platform for shame. "Grandma, it's just a joke," she said dismissively when I tried to talk to her. I can still hear the laughter from that birthday. The spark of joy quickly turned to ashes in my mouth. And here I sit, a stunned woman, silently absorbing the consequences of my own naivety. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're from and subscribe to the Still Got It channel. We're building a community of amazing people who know that the best chapters of our lives can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. When I think of Brianna, I often return to that small living room so many years ago, to her tiny fingers gliding along the edges of old family photographs. She was so innocent then, just a girl trying to process her parents' divorce. Her father's departure shattered her world, and for a moment, a protective instinct arose within me, something deeper than mere duty. I wanted to protect her at all costs. After the divorce, my role changed. I was not just a grandmother, but a lifeline. I worked a modest job as an archivist, preserving stories and memories, quietly saving money so Brianna would have everything she needed. Private school, dance lessons, her first car. I gave and gave, thinking it made her stronger, taught her gratitude. I clearly remember the soft click of her ballet shoes on the wooden floor, the way she jumped and spun, her face a picture of pure joy. That's what I hoped for, joy. Every lesson I paid for felt like an investment in her happiness, but gradually, something began to change. "What's boring about gardening? Look at these roses," I'd say, expecting her to appreciate the flowers pushing through the weeds, but her every response was laced with adolescent disdain. "That's so old-fashioned, Grandma. Be more modern." I'd chuckle at her impatience, burying each lesson in the dirt beneath my fingernails. "Patience is a virtue," I used to say, but I also feared my constant support had spurred an insatiable hunger in her. Every time, soon afterward, she came to me for another expensive gadget or an upgrade to her content, I felt a sense of entitlement creeping in, like a vine strangling my beloved marigolds. In my cautious heart, I clung to the hope that this would teach her the value of hard work. "Someday she'll understand," I often told myself, pulling out the weeds whose stubborn roots mirrored my own thoughts. I heard my mother's voice echo in my head. "Caring requires sacrifice, but not without learning respect." There were days when we sat on the porch with lemonade in hand, and I tried to engage her in conversation. I shared nuggets of wisdom from my past, telling her stories of collecting antiques at thrift stores, and how each item told its own story, a little piece of history. But every time I shared a cherished memory, she seemed to drift off into the distant reaches of her own imagination, her eyes only brightening at the sight of her phone. As Brianna delved into the world of social media, I felt the distance between us grow. Those early days urged me to continue showering her with every treasure I could, believing it would instill a deep sense of gratitude. Every gift, wrapped with love, was met with terse text messages, rather than sincere thanks. Sometimes I wondered if I had raised a child or a monster. Unaware of how far we had drifted apart. Then came the unforgettable day of her party. My heart swelled with pride as I gifted her a professional camera, hoping it would signify her passion. In my mind, That camera represented all the opportunities I wanted to give her. But how could I have known it would turn into something that would expose her entire sense of entitlement and reveal the true conflict between us? I thought filming a dance for TikTok would bring us closer, a light-hearted way to connect. Perhaps, in my unguarded optimism, I believed it would reflect our connection, solidifying my place in her life. Instead, it became a stage on which she could publicly mock me. And, replaying that moment in my mind, I felt the weight of misplaced trust way heavier than any of my expectations. The day of Brianna's party lingers in my memory like a weed I just can't seem to pull out. The air was crisp as I decorated the living room, filling it with pastel balloons that floated above smiling photos of her from years past. I was hoping for a day filled with joy, momentarily forgetting the turmoil we'd encountered after her father's departure. As guests began to arrive, I felt a pulse of excitement pound within me. Hearing their laughter, I hoped this would be a party to remember. But then, I spotted Brianna in the corner, busy, taking selfies with the fancy camera I'd bought her. She seemed more engrossed in her phone than in the scene. I waited for her to notice me. Hey, Grandma, come here, she called, her voice bright and cheerful. At that moment, I wanted to connect more than anything. So, pushing aside thoughts of the special cake I'd been baking all morning, I approached her in my apron. Let's film a TikTok dance. It's the latest trend, she said, her eyes sparkling. I should have sensed a trap, but all I could think about was that maybe this would be our moment. Okay, just this once, I warned, trying to sound casual even though my heart was pounding. Watching her mimic the movements, I felt the rhythm reverberate in my chest. But when it was my turn, everything went awry. I stumbled and fumbled, trying to keep up with her energy. The laughter around us died down, replaced by awkward giggles. Not like this, Grandma. You need to relax. Brianna giggled, but there was something sharper behind it. I felt the heat rise up my neck. Was she enjoying my struggle? The guests were watching, and I couldn't help but feel like a fool standing there. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. Okay, let's try this again, I said, forcing a smile. I wanted to maintain some dignity, but inside, shame and disappointment were battling for control. When I tried again, I realized Brianna wasn't filming for fun. She wanted social media content, not family togetherness. With every laugh, I felt the invisible walls between us tighten. It was painful. When I finished, I wiped my forehead, breathing heavily but trying to maintain my composure. Did that turn out okay? I asked, half hoping that would satisfy her. But glancing at her phone, I caught a glimpse of what she was recording, a video meant to show my awkwardness. Just wait, she smirked, her eyes shining with an ultra-familiar delight. My heart sank. Was she serious? I suddenly understood. She was plotting my fate of going viral at my own expense. The knot in my stomach tightened, and I retreated to my room briefly to catch my breath. Sitting on the edge of my bed, I opened the email and froze. There it was. Watch my grandma make a fool of herself. It was like a slap in the face. I didn't even have to click it. The headline said it all. The comments scrolled through my mind. Pathetic, awkward, and more. How could she do this to me? Everything I'd sacrificed now seemed worthless, eclipsed by this mockery. I took a deep breath and opened the TikTok app, my heart pounding. When the notification for Brianna's new video popped up, a wave of dread washed over me. The headline read, "Watch my grandma make a fool of herself." Brianna, I called, my voice breaking the cheerful atmosphere. The laughter died down as she turned to me, her eyebrows raised in mockery. This time, I wouldn't back down. Is this just a game to you? My voice trembled, but it was firm. The guests exchanged uncertain glances. I felt the weight of judgment outside our home. It's just a funny video. Grandma, don't you want to be part of the trend? Jamie, one of her friends, chimed in, her smile wide but naive. They didn't understand. It wasn't about likes or shares. It was about respect. And I felt it slipping away, like a grain of sand from a hand. Brianna waved my words dismissively. Everyone does it, Grandma. It's just for fun. Her words were thick with incomprehension. I wanted to shake her up by putting a drop of sense into her, but as I stood there, I felt the silence stretch, thickening in the room like fog. No, I countered, drawing strength from the well of strength that bubbled within me. You've crossed the line. I can't believe you humiliated me for views, for likes. The room held its breath, waiting for her answer. Brianna looked stunned, a shadow of doubt flickering across her face. Come on, it's just a joke, she retorted, but her defiance seemed weak. almost desperate. In that moment, I was adamant. I couldn't let her continue down this path of indifference. You'll understand. It's not all fun and games when you lose the respect of those who care about you, I retorted, feeling like my words might finally get through to her. The air in the living room was electric, the tension hanging awkwardly between Brianna and me. As her friends chatted and laughed around us, I watched the festivities, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. It was her birthday, and I wanted it to be memorable, but an underlying conflict threatened to overshadow the celebration. I thought we were having fun, Brianna said, her tone defensive. I sensed uncertainty in her eyes, a glimmer of doubt beneath her bravado. Fun shouldn't come at the cost of respect, I replied, keeping my voice even. I leaned forward slightly, trying to convey my concern without making things worse. But everyone does it, she protested, her irritation obvious. It's just a joke. People like it. I saw the hunger for validation in her expression, warped by the need for social media approval. I took a deep breath. I know it seems harmless, but it's not, I said firmly, not breaking eye contact. I refused to let my disappointment turn to anger, even though a quiet resentment was beginning to simmer within me. You just don't understand, she snapped, crossing her arms defiantly. For her, the world revolved around her friends' applause, cheap laughs, and likes at any cost. It hurt me in a way I couldn't articulate. I felt like further rebuke wouldn't help, and I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Instead, I decided to ease off the tension, letting my silence speak louder than words. It's your birthday. Let's focus on celebrating, I suggested, giving in to the moment. I offered her a tight smile, knowing there was no point in confronting her in front of her friends. Brianna hesitated, glanced back at her friends, and relented. Okay. The disdainful tone she adopted struck a chord with me. I turned toward the kitchen, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Instead of defeat, I found clarity. Sometimes the best way to weather a storm is to step back and observe. As I cut another slice of cake, I remembered the vibrant colors of the flowers I'd chosen for her birthday, blooming brightly despite the gathering shadows. Just then, Jamie walked into the kitchen, a knowing expression on her face. Brianna's quite the woman, isn't she? She asked, a hint of mockery in her voice. Yes, she is, I replied indifferently. I didn't want to elaborate. Brianna's charm was fading, especially when she was floundering in the shallows of social validation. Jamie shrugged. Youth, I guess. Being a teenager can be tough. I nodded, but the words rang hollow. I understood the stakes well, and they ran far deeper than mere youthful folly. When I returned to the living room, the atmosphere had lightened somewhat, filling with laughter once again. I caught Brianna's eye and noticed a smug smirk on her face, hinting that she considered this day her victory. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was dangerously close to becoming the villain in her own life story. With every superficial joke, she was plotting her own downfall without even realizing it. As the party continued, I remained quietly determined. I wasn't going to waste time arguing with her or trying to make her understand. Instead, I remembered the power of patience and timing. I watched Brianna chat with her friends, never taking her eyes off her phone. Each call sent a surge of excitement through her, and deep down, I knew the pleasure she sought was fleeting. By the time the last piece of cake was served, I felt a resolve building within me. I'd let her chase the temporary thrills while I braced myself for a more significant impact later. As the night wore on, I reminded myself that her actions would eventually catch up with her. Watching her bask in the attention while I remained a silent observer ignited a spark of anticipation within me. 3 days after Brianna's party, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the silent TV. I hadn't even turned it on. The silence felt safer, a barrier against the noise of a world that was suddenly laughing at me. My phone lay face down on the coffee table. I couldn't look at him anymore after seeing those notifications. Just harmless fun, my daughter said when I called her in tears. Mom, you're exaggerating. Kids these days post everything online. Her dismissive tone hurt more than Brianna's initial betrayal. Even my own child couldn't see how much it hurt me. I picked up the garden shears, considering going outside to trim the rose bushes, but my heart wasn't in it. What was the point? My roses wouldn't judge me. That was true, but they also couldn't erase the sting of those comments, still echoing in my memory. Pathetic old woman, they called me. Me, who spent decades preserving history as an archivist, who raised a family, who quietly built a life full of meaning. The ringing of a bell brought me out of my reverie. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I considered not approaching, but old habits die hard. I straightened my cardigan and headed for the door. Surprise! The woman on my porch beamed. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back into a stylish bob, her arms outstretched. For a second, I didn't recognize her. Then it dawned on me. Carol, I breathed. Carol Barnes herself. Are you going to invite me in? Or have you forgotten what hospitality feels like since our college days? Her laugh was just as I remembered it almost 50 years later, warm, and with a hint of mischief. I ushered her into the house, and a genuine smile pierced the clouds that had surrounded me for several days. Carol had been my roommate my senior year of college. We'd called each other occasionally over the decades, but it had been 15 years since we last saw each other. What brings you here? I asked, leading her into the kitchen, where I automatically began making tea. As far as I knew, you were enjoying your retirement in Arizona. You are, she said, settling herself at the kitchen table. But I was in town visiting my niece for a couple of weeks. When I saw that video, I knew I had to visit you. My hands froze on the teapot. Did you see it? Carol's expression softened. Darling, that's why I'm here. What your granddaughter did was cruel, and I couldn't just sit back and watch. The familiar shame washed over me again. But Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hands tightly. No, she said, reading my expression. And don't you dare be embarrassed. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I shook my head, holding back tears. It's everywhere, Carol. Millions of views, all these people laughing. My voice wavered. Carol pulled out her tablet. Yes, people are watching, but not everyone is laughing at you. Watch. She slid the tablet toward me, opened to Brianna's TikTok video. I flinched, not wanting to see it again, but Carol pointed to the comments section. Read these, she insisted. Reluctantly, I focused on the screen. Among the cruel comments were others I hadn't noticed before. This is disgraceful. Shame on you, young lady. Your grandmother is a treasure. Whoever raised you failed to teach you basic respect. I would be honored to have a grandmother who is willing to try new things. This isn't funny. It's heartbreaking. Grandma deserves better. I would give anything to dance with my grandmother again. You don't know what you're missing out on. Every supportive comment was like balm to my wounded heart. I looked up at Carol, blinking away tears. There are good people in this world, B, she said softly. People who see this for what it is, not humor, but humiliation, and they're on your side. I pushed the tablet away, not trusting my voice. Carol looked at me, her head tilted thoughtfully. You know, she said after a moment, you could do something about this. What? I asked. My voice even asked Brianna to delete it. She already refused, said I was being dramatic. Carol leaned forward, and a spark I remembered from college flashed in her eyes, the one that appeared before she suggested something brilliant or slightly reckless. Don't ask her to delete it. Take down yours. I stared at her. Your what? Your own TikTok account. She smiled at my stunned expression. Hear me out. Brianna thinks she can show the world who you are. Show them who Beatrice Sterling really is. I shook my head. That's ridiculous. I'm not making videos of myself for strangers. I am, after all, 72 years old. Exactly, Carol said triumphantly. You're 72, and behind that comes accumulated wisdom, talent, and authenticity. All the things these kids are desperately trying to fake. You have no idea how many people would appreciate seeing real content from someone with real-life experience. I laughed despite myself. Are you serious? Absolutely. Carol took a sip of her tea. B, I've seen you restore books that would be the envy of museums. Your garden would make professional landscapers weep with envy. You know more about historical preservation than most professors. Why not share this? Who would be interested in an old lady gardening or mending ancient books? Carol opened something else on her tablet. Well, this woman is 93 and has 8 million followers for her cooking lessons. She scrolled. This gentleman is 85 and teaches woodworking lessons. 3 million followers. More scrolling. And this lovely lady is our age and shares vintage fashion tips. 5 million. I stared at the screen, genuinely surprised. These weren't polished influencers with perfect makeup and polished personas. These were just people sharing what they loved. The internet isn't just for the young, B, Carol said softly, and certainly not just for the superficial. What if, instead of hiding from what Brianna did, you showed the world who you really are, not in retaliation, but as a reclamation? I don't even know where to begin, I admitted, but something stirred inside me, a feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. Carol smiled. That's why I'm here. I have 2 weeks before I go back to Arizona, and I know a thing or two about social media. I couldn't hide my surprise. She laughed. Don't look so surprised. I run the entire online presence for my retirement community. These bridge tournament streams don't organize themselves. You know, for the first time in days, I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. You're really serious. Huh, more serious than a heart attack. And at our age, that's pretty serious. Carol winked. So, what do you say? Ready to show your granddaughter that you don't need filters or pranks to connect with people? I looked around my kitchen, the herbs drying by the window, the antique clock I'd painstakingly restored, the shelves filled with preserves from my garden. My life wasn't flashy or trendy, but it was authentic. It was mine. What am I even going to call it? I asked, the idea taking root, despite my resistance. Carol tapped her chin thoughtfully. Something that captures your essence. Something warm, wise. Her eyes lit up. How about Wisdom and Wonders of Grandma B? I tried the title on in my mind. It seemed appropriate, dignified, yet accessible, not trying to be something I wasn't. Okay, I said, squaring my shoulders. Let's do it. Not to get back at Brianna, but to set the record straight. To show that being a grandmother isn't all about being a laughingstock. Carol raised her teacup in toast. Here's to Grandma B's second act. May it be even better than the first. As our cups clinked together, I felt something shift within me. A quiet resolve replaced the pain that had consumed me. Brianna had tried to reduce me to a caricature, a momentary joke in her curated online world. But I was more than that moment. I was decades of stories, skills, and survival. And perhaps it was time for the world to know. That evening, after Carol left, promising to return tomorrow with equipment, I stood in front of my bookcase, running my fingers along the spines of the volumes I had rescued and restored over the years. Each book had been brought back from the brink of oblivion, pages rebound, covers restored, history preserved. Perhaps, I whispered to the quiet room, it's time for a new restoration project. Only this time, I will be restoring my own pride. I picked up my phone and, instead of avoiding it, opened the camera app. My reflection stared back at me. Gray hair, wrinkles around my eyes. A look that had seen 7 decades of life. Not perfect, not filtered, but real. I pressed record. Hello, I said, my voice sounding more confident than I expected. My name is Beatrice Sterling, but you can call me Grandma B. Hold the phone higher. B. I need to show your hands at work. Carol adjusted my grip on the smartphone, which was propped up on a makeshift tripod made from books and a tin cookie box. This seems so ridiculous, I muttered, carefully flipping through the fragile pages of the 1892 botanical journal I was restoring. 2 weeks into our TikTok experiment, I still felt awkward in front of the camera. Trust me, Carol insisted. People love to watch the masters at work. Just pretend I'm not here. I sighed but continued my painstaking work, explaining each step as I carefully glued back the torn page. The secret is in the flour paste. Industrial glue will damage this old paper, and this recipe is hundreds of years old. Later that evening, we watched the finished video. My hands looked steady and confident on the yellowed pages, my voice calm as I explained the preservation methods. Perfect, natural, and authentic, Carol declared, uploading it with the caption, "Saving history, 1 page at a time." In the first week, exactly 43 people signed up, mostly Carol's friends. By the 3rd week, that number had mysteriously jumped to almost 2,000. They're book lovers, Carol explained, scrolling through the comments. They're sharing your restoration videos in their communities. I looked at the screen, adjusting my reading glasses. The comments were incredibly positive. Finally, someone who knows what they're talking about. I could watch her restore books all day. My grandmother was a librarian. It brings back such wonderful memories. It was incredibly touching. Every day we filmed something new. Monday was gardening. The secrets of interplanting my grandmother taught me. Tuesday was book restoration. Wednesday featured my collection of vintage buttons. Every button tells a story. Thursday was recipe day. And Friday was archive mysteries time, where I shared fascinating historical curiosities from my career. The kitchen timer rang, and I pulled out a baking sheet of lavender shortbread cookies. Today's cooking segment. They smelled delicious, Carol said, already setting up the camera. Just set them down carefully and tell me about the candied flowers on top. Lavender from my garden, I began, and suddenly realized how naturally the words flowed. No script, no rehearsal, just the joy of what I love. A month later, A notification popped up, not about a comment or a subscription. It was a direct message from Heritage Home Preserves. Ms. Sterling, we love watching your videos about canning and preserving. Our company specializes in artisan canning equipment, and we'd like to send you our jars and tools to showcase in your content. I stared at the message, perplexed. Carol, I called. Someone wants to send me free canning supplies. Carol rushed in from the garden, reading over my shoulder. B, it's a sponsorship offer. They want to pay you to use their products. Pay me. That's absurd. I'm just an old lady talking about jam. Carol shook her head, laughing. No, now you're You have. She checked her screen. Almost 15,000 followers. Quite impressive for 6 weeks. I considered the offer carefully. The company seemed legitimate, small, family-run, with values that aligned with mine. Their glass jars were made in the States, not cheap imports that always crack when canning. I'll only feature products I actually use myself, I insisted. No pretending something is great if it isn't. Of course, Carol agreed. Authenticity is your brand. My brand. The thought was both preposterous and strangely inspiring. 2 days later, a package arrived from Heritage Home Preserves. The following week, Thornfield Books offered vintage bookbinding supplies. By the 3rd month, Gardener's Earth wanted me to endorse their organic fertilizers. I scrutinized every offer, accepting only those that felt right. Small companies, ethical practices, products I genuinely loved. The money wasn't exorbitant, but it was mine, earned through decades of accumulated knowledge. One evening, while filming a button sewing demonstration, my phone rang. Brianna's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then let it go to voicemail. Aren't you going to pick up? Carol asked. I shook my head, returning to my sewing. She only calls when she needs something. Let's finish this video first. Asterisk, a voicemail came in. Hey Grandma, just checking in. By the way, did you really start a TikTok account? Jamie's mom mentioned seeing you online. Call me back, okay? Carol raised an eyebrow. She's surprised. She'll be even more surprised when I don't call her right away, I replied, surprising myself with my firmness. So, where were we with that seam? Asterisk, later that night, after Carol left for her nieces, I scrolled through my growing video collection. There I was in the garden, in the morning light, my hands soiled but confident. There I was, explaining the history of a Civil War button. There I was, laughing as my soufflé spectacularly collapsed. No filters, no exaggerated reactions, just me, Beatrice Sterling, exactly as I am. A notification appeared. Blossom Books had tagged me in a post. If you love books, you need to follow Wisdom and Wonders of Grandma B. Her restoration tips saved my grandmother's Bible. Real, authentic words that rang true. I thought of Brianna's carefully curated feed, the identical poses, the rehearsed expressions, the desperate pursuit of trends. Something akin to pity stabbed me. My phone vibrated with another call from Brianna. This time, I answered. Grandma, finally, did you get my message? Are you really on TikTok? Hello, Brianna. Yes, I started an account, just sharing my hobbies. That's unexpected. Her tone, there was a hint of confusion, perhaps a hint of condescension. Need help. These apps can be tricky for... Actually, I'm pretty good at it, I interrupted softly. Carol's helping me. Carol? Who's Carol? An old friend. Listen, honey, I have to go. I'm getting ready for a garden shoot tomorrow. The silence on the other end of the line was satisfying in a way I wasn't entirely proud of. Well, good luck then, I guess. After the conversation, I checked the stats for my latest video. 20,000 views. More importantly, hundreds of comments from people saying I'd inspired them to try book restoration, or that my garden reminded them of their grandmothers. I wasn't going viral in Brianna's world of dance challenges and pranks, but I was connecting, genuinely connecting with people who appreciated what I had to offer. And somehow, it felt like the sweetest victory of all. Grandma's TikTok is actually pretty cute, Brianna laughed, scrolling through my latest videos while lounging on my couch. Her unexpected visit seemed less about wanting to see me and more about satisfying her curiosity. Although gardening is such a niche topic, you have, like, a few thousand followers. I smiled, not bothering to correct the outdated number. That keeps me busy. Well, I'm meeting with Everglow Beauty next week, she announced, straightening up with pride. Their timeless skincare line is serious business. We're talking about a national campaign. That's sweet, dear, I replied, pouring her the tea she hadn't asked for. After she left, My phone rang. An unknown number with a Manhattan area code. Ms. Sterling, this is Vanessa Lee from Everglow Beauty. We've been following your content and are impressed by your authentic approach. My heart sank. I'm afraid you've confused me with my granddaughter. She's an influencer. No confusion, Vanessa assured me. We're specifically interested in you for our new campaign, Identifying Authenticity. Your authentic content represents exactly what modern consumers are looking for. She laid out a proposal so compelling that I had to sit down. But why me? Audiences are tired of manufactured content. Your authenticity resonates. You've built a remarkable level of trust. She paused. Also, we saw the original video your granddaughter posted. We prefer to partner with those who demonstrate grace under fire. That same evening, I signed the contract electronically, something I'd learned on my journey to TikTok. I never told Brianna that the very company she was after had already chosen her grandmother instead. Some victories are sweeter when savored in silence. My morning routine had changed. Coffee, a garden check, and now analytics. Carol had taught me well. Today's numbers showed that my follower count had quietly surpassed 250,000. I smiled, sipping my tea, as the sun warmed my kitchen. My phone vibrated. A message from Carol. Have you seen Brianna's last post? Horrible. I hadn't checked Brianna's account for weeks. Last I heard, she was still confident in the Everglow deal. Curiosity got the better of me, and I tapped her profile. Her views had dropped dramatically. Her latest video, which typically garners hundreds of thousands of views, barely reached 20,000. The comments section was merciless. Isn't this the girl who humiliated her grandmother? Still waiting for a real apology for your grandmother. No talent, just anger. Her last post was a dramatic close-up of her face, her eyes glistening with tears that never fell. Guys, I need to clarify something, she began, her voice shaking. I've made a few mistakes in my content. I didn't mean to hurt anyone with my videos. I'm just trying to make people laugh and spread positivity. Not once did she specifically mention me or the video that started it all. The comments immediately pointed out her evasiveness. Name what exactly you did wrong, otherwise it's just damage control. A convenient moment when your views are dropping. Your poor grandmother deserved better than this. I put the phone down, feeling a sudden wave of sympathy. After all, she was still my granddaughter. That sympathy evaporated 3 hours later, when my doorbell rang. Brianna burst in without waiting for an invitation, her face flushed with anger. What did you say, Ev? She demanded, pacing the living room. Hello to you too, Brianna, I replied calmly. I haven't talked to anyone about you. My agent says the deal fell through because of image issues, she said, making air quotes with trembling fingers. They said they'd chosen a different direction for their campaign. This was my big chance. I kept a neutral expression, though my heart was pounding. I hadn't signed a confidentiality agreement, but prudence dictated keeping quiet, before the campaign launched. I'm sorry to hear that, dear. And then I find out you're getting all these sponsorships. She gestured wildly at the canning jars arranged on my countertop. Are you competing with me now? Is this some kind of revenge? Brianna, I'm just sharing my interests. Not everything revolves around you. Your account is taking off just when mine is failing. It can't be a coincidence. Her voice rose sharply. Who's really running your account? It has to be someone younger, right? You couldn't figure all this out on your own. These accusations hurt more than I'd like to admit. I was learning, Brianna, just like I learned how to restore antique books or graft fruit trees. Age doesn't make me incapable of growth, she snorted, grabbing her designer bag. Never mind. Just know that I see right through this sweet grandma image of you. You're as calculating as anyone in this business. Reaching the door, she turned around, her eyes narrowed. I'm going to expose this whole scheme. My followers deserve to know you're just trying to sabotage me with your fake authenticity. The door slammed behind her, shaking the antique frames on the wall filled with photos of family moments I'd cherished, including many with Brianna as a child. I sank heavily into a chair, my hands shaking slightly. My phone beeped with a notification from Everglow. Campaign materials arrive tomorrow. Photo shoot scheduled for Thursday. The irony wasn't lost on me. While Brianna was plotting my exposure, I was supposed to become the face of the very campaign she'd lost. Not through manipulation or scheming, but simply by being myself. It seemed some lessons were meant to be learned the hard way. Just lift your chin slightly, Miss Sterling. Perfect. The photographer's camera clicked rapidly as I sat among the blooming roses, the morning light filtering through the petals. The Everglow team insisted on shooting in my own garden, calling it authentically beautiful, just like our new ambassador. The past week had been a whirlwind of preparations. Professional lighting now illuminated my humble garden. Makeup artists had enhanced my features with such subtlety that I still looked like myself. The marketing team had worked around my natural routines rather than imposing artificial scenarios. "Cut," the director announced. "Beatrice, you are a natural." I laughed. At 72, I hope I'm still a natural at being me. While the team was gathering equipment, Vanessa approached with an embossed envelope. "Before I forget, your invitation to the Everglow Influence Awards ceremony this weekend. We're presenting the campaign there. A car will pick you up at 6. An awards ceremony?" I hesitated. "That's more Brianna's thing than mine." Vanessa smiled. "Trust me, you'll want to be there. It's a pretty big deal in the industry." Later that day, my doorbell rang. It was Carol, excitedly clutching her tablet. "They've started announcing the campaign," she exclaimed, sitting down next to me on the couch. She opened Everglow's Instagram page, where a video was playing, close-ups of hands working in garden soil, flipping through book pages, measuring out ingredients. My hands, with the tagline, "Beauty isn't manufactured, it's cultivated. They haven't revealed your face yet," Carol explained, to create anticipation. On Saturday night, I found myself in the back seat of a formal sedan, wearing a simple yet elegant navy blue dress that complemented my gray hair. Carol helped me dress, insisting on comfortable low-heeled shoes to keep me from wobbling. "You look radiant," she assured me, squeezing my hand as we approached the venue. "Remember, you've earned this moment." The red carpet flashed by in a blinding flash of camera flashes and faces I vaguely recognized from Brianna's world. Several young influencers glanced curiously in my direction, clearly wondering who I was. I smiled politely, clutching my small purse like a life preserver. Inside, the ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers and beautiful people. Vanessa led me to a reserved table near the stage. "Perfect timing," she whispered. "The Everglow partnership is about to be announced." Across the room, I spotted Brianna at a table with other young influencers. She hadn't seen me yet. Her face was animated, chatting, occasionally glancing eagerly at the stage. My stomach churned. Had she really sealed the deal? The lights dimmed, and a spotlight fell on the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th Annual Influence Awards." The host, a TV personality I recognized but couldn't name, beamed. "Before we begin the awards, we have an exciting announcement from our title sponsor, Everglow Beauty." Vanessa squeezed my hand as Everglow's CEO walked onto the stage. For decades, beauty marketing has focused on youth, perfection, and unattainable standards," he began. "Today, we're proud to announce a fundamental shift in this approach. Our new campaign, Adjectifying Authenticity, celebrates the beauty of genuine experience, wisdom, and character." Asterisk. The screen behind him lit up with the Everglow logo. "Please enjoy an exclusive first look at our campaign featuring our new global ambassador." The room went dark. Then, to my amazement, my face appeared on the giant screen, not airbrushed beyond recognition, but beautifully lit, highlighting the wrinkles around my eyes and gray hair. My voiceover rang out over stunning shots of my hands working with plants, books, and baked goods. "True beauty isn't about erasing your history. It's about honoring each chapter. Every wrinkle, every mark, they're not flaws. They're evidence of a life well lived." The audience fell silent, captivated by the images of me in my garden, surrounded by roses, smiling with genuine warmth. The final shot pulled back, revealing me sitting contentedly among my flowers, looking directly into the camera. Authenticity never goes out of style. The Everglow logo appeared next to my name. Beatrice Sterling, Everglow, Global Ambassador. There was a moment of silence, then came applause, not polite, but deafening, full of genuine appreciation. People stood, some wiped away tears. "Please welcome to the stage," the CEO announced, "a face of authentic beauty, Ms. Beatrice Sterling." Rising on slightly shaky legs, I met Brianna's gaze across the room. Her face went white, her mouth slightly open in shock. Our gazes met for a brief moment. The dawning realization in her eyes told me everything. This was the deal she'd been chasing, the partnership she'd been so sure of securing. The walk to the stage felt surreal. like floating in a dream. The flashes of cameras intensified, now all focused on me. I accepted the CEO's outstretched hand and turned to the audience, finding my voice despite my pounding heart. "Thank you," I said simply. At my age, I've learned that beauty isn't something to be chased. It's something to be nurtured, like a garden with patience, authenticity, and appreciation for each season. The room erupted in applause again. Industry executives nodded. Journalists took quick notes. Brianna quietly slipped out of her seat across the room, heading for the exit. Her shoulders were hunched, her phone clutched in her hand. Looking out at the sea of faces, I felt no triumph at her humiliation, only a quiet satisfaction. This moment wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity on my own terms. And perhaps, I thought as Brianna disappeared through the door, she needed to learn this lesson as much as I needed to teach it. 6 months after launching the Everglow campaign, I sat in my sunny room, filming an episode of my now weekly series, Tea with B. My subscriber count had grown to numbers that still stunned me. 3 million people who tuned in for gardening tips, restoration projects, and what Carol called grandmotherly wisdom for the modern age. Today's question is from Eliza in Portland, I said, reading from my tablet. She asks, "How do you stay authentic when the world rewards you?" I smiled, stirring my tea, remembering that true rewards aren't measured in likes or dollars, but in the peace you feel when you lay your head on the pillow each night. After finishing the shoot, I checked my calendar. The Sterling Digital Literacy Foundation board meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. The foundation, funded by my earnings from Everglow, had already helped hundreds of seniors bridge the digital divide, turning potential isolation into connection. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting company. Brianna stood there. She looked different. Simple clothes, less makeup, a hesitation in her posture I'd never seen before. "Grandma," she said quietly, "can we talk?" We sat in the garden, an awkward silence stretching between us. She lost her apartment, her sponsorship deals evaporated, and she started working at a local boutique. "The owner says I have good taste in merchandising," she added with a small but genuine smile. "That doesn't surprise me," I replied. "You've always had an eye for beauty." Her apology was awkward, imperfect, but sincere. I was so focused on being seen that I stopped seeing others, especially you. I didn't rush to forgive her. Some lessons must be learned in all their weight to be meaningful. But I offered tea and conversation, setting clear boundaries for a careful resumption of our relationship later. As the sunset painted my garden golden, I jotted down a final thought from my weekly journal. Fame found me when I stopped chasing it. Influence came when I focused first on influencing my own life. I never set out to teach Brianna a lesson. I simply refused to accept the one she tried to teach me about my worth. Sometimes the most powerful statement isn't a loud declaration, but a quiet persistence in being yourself without apology. Like my roses, I chose to bloom where I was planted, even when others saw only weeds. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was Brianna's fall enough, or should she have faced even greater consequences? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe to hear more stories like mine.